a wonderful set of speakers for you today. I'm going to interview, we've got Tim Ash and Dr. Limor Gottlieb. So just a bit of housekeeping. This is put on by the Internet Dating Excellence Association. Thanks also to our sponsor, Dating Through Curiosity, who has made this event possible. And also Cortland Brooks, which is my little agency and consultancy, which is focused on serving online dating companies. So without further ado, let me just introduce Tim. So Tim Ash is trained in computer engineering and cognitive science. I know Tim from years ago from the Internet Dating Conference, iDate, but also from his conversion conference. We spoke at and ran many conversion conferences, which is basically a UX UI conference, which was just absolutely wonderful. The part that I most enjoyed about his conferences were the live critiques. He'd do teardowns live of people's websites. He's advised a who's who of clients, Google, Facebook, Expedia, American Express. And he previously wrote the classic book, Landing Page Optimization, and more recently, Unleash Your Primal Brain. We also are privileged to have Dr. Limor Gottlieb presenting with us, interviewing. She's a doctor of evolutionary psychology. She's also a writer for Cosmopolitan, Glamour, and Harper's Bazaar. She is dedicated to helping people improve their dating intelligence and the quality of their intimate relationships. They are both experts, I should note, in evolutionary psychology, and are about to publish their awesome new book, Primal Dating, the Unflinching Evolutionary Psychology Guide to Modern Relationships. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction.
Great to see you. Great to have you here.
Great to see you again, Mark.
Great. Welcome. And great to have you here. So I thought we could kick off. I'd love to ask you about the evolutionary pressures that men and women face and what kind of asymmetries this has led to.
So when we talk about asymmetries, we're talking about sex differences that have evolved, so between men and women. We're talking about cisgender men and women. And so I have to start by saying that the price of sex for women is a lot more expensive than for men. So the investment of a woman that goes into pregnancy and postpartum and then raising offspring as a result of having sex is a lot costlier than for men. For men, it requires just a sperm contribution. And this is why men have evolved to spread their genes, quote unquote, and they look for sexual variety and they shy away from commitment typically. And women, on the other hand, they want commitment as a guarantee that the man will stick around long enough to raise offspring. So those are the asymmetries. However, there is a conflict for men because on one hand, when they pursue short-term mating, they look for women that signal sexual availability. And on the other hand, when they're looking for long-term commitment, for long-term relationships, they're looking for women who signal more personality attributes like warmth, kindness, agreeability. So, yes. So those are that's the asymmetry when we talk about asymmetry.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would say that what Limor just described colloquially is known as the Madonna whore complex. Okay, yes. So we want the whore, pardon the phrase, for short-term mating, but we want the Madonna, we want the perfect loyal wife for long-term, and that's because of paternity risk. There was uncertain paternity in our past. We didn't really know who the father was, and there was plenty of promiscuity. So it's really important if we're going to invest in raising a kid that we know it's our kid, and that's why we jealously mate guard women, and women have their own version of that as well. But I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, important. Thank you.
So when we think about the constructs of dating apps, do you think it seems like we have to take on this kind of innate understanding of sexual compatibility and kind of the asymmetries of mating. Have we done a good job, by and large, in your opinion?
Ooh, well, are dating apps making things better or worse? Is that another way of saying that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that on top of the biological stuff that Limor just outlined, I think that there are actually distortions created by dating apps that are making things a lot worse. I mean, so that's kind of my high level takeaway. First of all, there's way more men than women on apps. And again, that's no surprise because all relationships are three-phase. The man makes the approach, the woman is the gatekeeper of sex, and then the man is the gatekeeper of provisioning and commitment. He decides whether and how far to take that relationship. So what's happened is, since it's so easy to just swipe right or left, men's approach behavior has no consequences. So they're swiping right on everything. And because of that, women are getting this really, really distorted sense of how desirable they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you combine that, so more men, more approaches, and then women are also, there's something that's labeled stranger danger. If a woman doesn't know you, you're rated lower as a man, like 2 to 3 points lower on a 1 to 10 scale. And online, everybody's a stranger. So the woman's default setting is you're a stranger and you're not that attractive. So if you combine all of that, what we find is that women have essentially a massively inflated sense of their desirability, and they're confusing sexual interest with relationship possibilities. And most men have become functionally invisible unless they're the chads, the top of the heap.
On average, do you think women's and men's sexual marketplace value changes over time? I mean, really, what we've set up are these mass marketplaces. And there's buyers and sellers. I mean, not buyers and sellers, but there's a matching of the two. I never forget interviewing the CEO and founder of Shardi in India, Anupam Mittal. It's in my documentary, actually, my vlogumentary.
Yeah.
India. And he said the interesting thing about matching on other marketplaces is that when you go on Amazon and you find a book that you like, the book doesn't have to like you back. So we have this complex marketplace that we have to navigate of values and availability and location, and gosh, in terms of India, we've got compounding levels of complexity with astrological influences. Then we've also got caste to consider. So
right.
Very, very complex marketplaces. But just in general, how do you see that layout of the sexual marketplace and the value?
Limor, may I take a shot at this one?
Yes, of course.
So in the book, in Primal Dating, we talk about the box. Basically, it's a cross. So women's average market value, sexual marketplace value, starts high and goes down the rest of their lives, whereas men start low. They're useless to other men and to women in terms of providing a lifestyle, and they have to work for decades and then kind of peak between 40 and 60. But there's a crossover at age 30. So the short answer is there's a shelf life for women, whether they like it or not. Your value is highest today than it's ever going to be, and by the time you're middle-aged, the man on average is going to significantly have higher value, and that persists into old age. So the crossover happens at right around 30. So the most stable kind of relationships are younger women, older men, or men and women where at the crossover around age 30. By the way, US women have pushed that to 29 is the first marriage average age now. So they've pushed it as close to that limit as they can in terms of having a slight advantage. And then the other option is what we call Cougar Town, where older women are looking for genes of younger men. And those are all equal value relationships. If you look at the X, there's the top of the X, the middle of the X, and the bottom of the X. What's unstable is same age relationships that are further from that crossover point. So young people, they're not likely to end up as high school sweethearts. The men are a huge disadvantage. And in middle age, regardless of cheating or any precipitating events, men have this huge imbalance. And there's typically a kind of midlife crisis stuff or divorces happening in middle age too.
What do you think, Dr. Gottlieb? Anything to add?
Yeah, no, and this is what we call sexual economics. It's a trade-off, yes.
Yes, and we have to manage it. We have to manage expectations.
Absolutely.
One of the
Yes.
economic distortions in the market.
Exactly.
I think eHarmony did a very good job with this, because they kind of had a spigot on this kind of demand. They slowed down the communications continuum and had people kind of converse before even seeing each other for many years. They were kind of unique in the marketplace many years ago, in that they just wouldn't allow you to see each other until you got it through a certain number of questions, and then got into open communications, and then you could meet and match. And
Well, and I'm going to question something you said there,
Yeah,
Mark,
I
because
know too.
it's almost presupposing that the outcome is a long-term
Yeah.
relationship or
Yeah.
lifelong monogamy or marriage, or that's where we should be headed. And the complexity of human mating is just way wider than that. So
Yeah. So are humans
Yeah.
monogamous as a species? What can apps do to support non-monogamy and open relationships? How do you see that all from your perspective?
Limor, you take
Yeah.
that one. Yeah.
Well, if we look at hunter-gatherers, which is, our ancestors, and there's still some tribes that are hunter-gatherers, we're serial monogamists. However, monogamish, because we all seek strategies outside of our main relationship as well, when it's beneficial. And there are sex differences too. And as we know, the infidelity gap is closing, the gender gap. So women cheat as much as men, but for different evolutionary reasons. But yeah, it's important to acknowledge that part of our human nature. Don't shoot the messenger. This is just biology.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I would say that, so the more you mentioned different reasons that people cheat. So for
Yes.
men, it's sexual variety. There's a very little opportunity cost. If someone's willing to have sex with me, I'll do it, right? So that's basically the stance. For women, so it's possible for a man to say, I love my wife and I still have a
Yes.
wandering eye. And those are not incompatible for men. For women, it's different. They're looking for long-term provisioning, the stability of the resources and emotional support and everything coming their way. So if that starts to go down, men are in most danger when they start losing financial resources. And then women are looking to have a plan B, an exit, and they're forming kind of a side relationship emotionally to jump over to get off of that down escalator that they're currently on. So they're cheating, but they're cheating for different reasons.
I will just add to that. Yes, research shows that women mostly cheat for emotional reasons, unlike men. However, again, looking at hunter-gatherers, women also cheat to have better genetic fitness for their children. So it's to diversify the gene pool.
Yeah, that's right. So around ovulation, women actually prefer the rugged guys, like with the good genes. So they're
So
more
you're
swayed
looking
by
for
that.
someone who looks fit.
So it's kind of diversification, portfolio diversification. You want the good genes, and then you want to snuggle up with the guy that's providing the snacks and the resources, afterwards. So it makes sense, again, from these competing evolutionary pressures.
Gotcha. So I also want to ask you, so on top of the biological stuff, what are the distortions that you think we've created? What do you think how's the dating apps kind of distorted this marketplace?
Well, I think that there's the apps are a visual medium. So that's one.
Yeah.
So men have always been focused on women's fertility cues, which they can just glance at a woman and tell right away. So that's useful. And so that means that women have to have their profiles dialed in terms of pictures and things like that. But it's also true for men too.
Yeah.
That's, as Limor said, that's a consideration for short-term mating for women. So I think men have to bring up the visual parts of their profiles as well. In fact, we've talked about maybe partnering with some of you here on this call to maybe do live teardowns of people's profiles that they volunteer, because people are doing the most god-awful things, holding up dead fish and wearing baseball caps backwards and bathroom selfies. I mean, we have a whole list in the book. So it's a visual medium. Make sure you dial in the visual stuff. That's really, really important. Yeah. And also, I think that the relationship status, that's another important thing. Like, women want the commitment, but if they're basically saying, hey, I want to get married, or I want an exclusive long-term relationship, the men are just thinking, well, do I even like you? I don't even know that yet. And we haven't had sex. I don't know what the chemistry is like. So a woman leading with relationship goals is also a problem, because they think so highly of themselves that the men aren't even going to approach them, because it's basically the gendered equivalent of saying, I just want to screw, if a man says it. But a woman can just say, I just want commitment. Don't make me jump through hoops. So that's another big.
And I think this is also hurting a lot of women in their 30s, unfortunately, because men tend to shy away from, oh my God, she will want to get married tomorrow, have kids the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no space for mystery, for getting to know each other. Let's see if we can have a good time together.
So I think that one of the things that,
yeah.
So one suggestion for all of you is like, what are your categories for relationship type? If it's like, casual, short-term, long-term marriage, that's too restrictive. I think every site should have a category that's like, let's see where this goes. I mean, because that's really where a lot of people are, and you have to pass through phases to get to more commitment, even if that's your goal. So, but if you don't have that option, it makes you seem really rigid.
Yeah. And especially men, we know from the research, men tend to lie about wanting commitment. So that's not even an honest measure.
Yeah. So more like, like a relationship status, like I'll know it when I see it. That would probably be.
Yeah.
I heard a saying years ago that men lie about wanting a long-term relationship and women lie about wanting a short-term one. What do you think of that?
Yes.
There's a lot of truth in that. And so that people will all be, then that's another problem with online dating sites, is there's a lot of distortion. People lie about their age, they Photoshop and filter their pictures. So they're presenting themselves in the best light, and you can understand it more graciously from that standpoint. But yeah, they're gonna essentially lie and skew things to present themselves most favorably.
It's called the sexual arms race for a reason, and we're not the only species that deceives for mating.
Yeah. We've definitely got a complex job. I've got a bunch of questions for you. Shall we go into Q&A?
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to pick off the top ones from Barbara Van Zyl. Thank you, Barbara. Can the experts comment on the rising trend of younger men seeking to date older women?
Yes. It's what Tim was mentioning before, that women's value kind of declines as her fertility goes down. And so when a woman is older, she has actually easier access to younger men whose value in terms of mate value is still lower. And that's where Cougar Town comes in, as we describe it in our book. And that's actually really great. And I wish that more women knew this going into online dating, because maybe you should, seek younger aged men who don't have the access to maybe younger women.
Yeah, the younger men are getting the table scraps right now. They have no optionality. And so if a mature, I still look great in my Lululemon, middle-aged woman approaches them, absolutely. That could be, again, we have to look at it equal value. So younger men with older women is equal value at the top of that X. Younger women with older men, equal value also. And then at the crossover point where both are about 30. So look for those stable, equal value things, because evolution pairs us up. It's like your lunch table in junior high. People sit with certain people. You're not going to get the supermodel if you're a guy, and you're not going to get the billionaire if you're a woman, because the competition is white hot. So we tend to pair off with people of equal value. Those are the most stable relationships.
Yep. Gotcha. Shalini Singh asks, how do singles discuss compatibility around libido? What if one has low libido?
Yes.
Never high. Any advice or observations from
Absolutely. So according to research, there is a sex difference. Typically, women have lower libido than men. And this makes sense because, sex is influenced, or pleasure is influenced by outside stressors as well. And women experience a lot more stress than men, having, more childcare responsibilities and house chores and all of these things, plus having a career and work. And yes, so women are probably not too much in the mood for sex, especially, during certain life stages. But having said this, this is something that couples can work around. So there is spontaneous desire and responsive desire. And a lot of people think, especially women, think that desire has to be spontaneous. So it's like when we just start dating and there are the fireworks and you can't wait to get naked and jump into bed together. That obviously doesn't exist in long-term relationships, or very rarely. Maybe you have a really nice date night. But otherwise, when it gets to routine sex, we really have to schedule it. and it can be responsive. So desire is like, you have to think of it like a switch that we can flip, and you can literally get turned on. And that's equally great as spontaneous desire.
Fascinating. And what's the role of dating apps? I mean, there are genuine mismatches, among some people just really are off the charts in one direction, and
let's put it bluntly. So dating and mating is about mating. Okay, it's about, if I can, Limor, I'm sure you could go to lots of meetup groups and go to book clubs and go to movies and do things with your friends. I can do a lot of things with my guy friends. I'm sure most women don't want to go to a soccer match with me, necessarily. So the question is, like, what can you get only in an intimate relationship? And that's intimacy. So I think one mistake I just want to comment on that women very commonly make is they don't mention sensuality in their profile at all. It's like, I like hiking, I like going to farmers markets, I like pickleball, great, that's an activity list. But if you don't say, I want somebody that can, I can have deep sensual connection with, it's something even as basic as that, that's a mistake, because we're not looking to find a little meetup buddy. So from a man's perspective, women not mentioning sensuality in their profile is a big red flag.
Yeah.
One of the best surveys I ever saw was an adaptive survey that was on true.com many years ago when it came to sexual compatibility. And what they did is they took you down whatever direction you wanted to take, as deep as you wanted to go. If you wanted to stay light and, be fairly regular and plain Jane, then you could be. But if you indicated that you like whips and chains, then it would take you down that avenue as far as you wanted to go. And that's quite unique in the industry. It was, it's a generic dating service that would take you down whatever rabbit hole you wanted to go. That was nicely done. I've not seen anything quite like that. I mean, the casual apps tend to give more definition to these kinds of questions.
Yeah, like something like Field would probably does a good job of that. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. But also I think that all relationships start off casual. I think that's also important to mention, and they should.
Yeah. Very interesting statement. Wow. Yeah. That's a bold, fascinating statement. I love it. So let me ask you a question from Peter. He's got a question here for you. How has introvert/extrovert balance changed over the past decades?
Well, the percentage of introverts and extroverts hasn't changed at all. That's a population level thing, and that's just wired into your genes. So I think that in a way, introverts tend to favor the apps because they don't have to leave their house, but that's also the lowest yield place to meet people. So I think that advice for introverts is still try to get out into the real world to meet people, even if it's uncomfortable. I don't think that's changed.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's fascinating. I just wonder if the kind of the phones, the screens, if that has warped people's brains to the point that they are more interested in communicating via computer-mediated communication, right? They're comfortable because that's what they've grown up with. Do we equate that with introversion, or is that really something different?
Social awkwardness, probably. Yeah, no, but we know this. I mean, Gen Z and now the newer generations, they don't know how to interact in person because of that. It's a shame.
Yeah. Gotcha. Right. I think so what did I ask
And
you?
also dating apps, at least in my field, not to offend anyone, but we call them introductory apps, not dating. So dating happens in real life.
Yeah. I love that clarification. That's the truth of it. I remember the CEO of Meetic once said, "We don't promise love, we promise a date." So you're taking it back a step. We don't promise dates, we promise introductions.
And that's great. How lucky are we to live in this day and age?
Yeah.
And then, but Mark, to go off of something you said, there is another distortion that's happening in the apps, and that's because they're computer mediated. We don't see the competition.
Oh, yeah.
So you see these, attractive guys, these beautiful women, and we're like, yeah, sure, I'd want a relationship with them. You don't see them, but in a bar, they'd be surrounded by a bunch of other people, and you couldn't even compete. So we don't have a realistic sense of our own value, if you will, sexual marketplace value. I think apps could do a much better job of just letting you work inside of your range. They should not be serving up people way outside of your range, because that's giving you a more distorted sense of what's possible.
Yeah. And maybe limiting options too. I know some apps already do that in terms of how many chats you can have open, but we know that the more options we have, it gets to paradox of choice. And that was shown in studies in supermarkets, right? Give people 10 choices of peanut butter and they won't choose any.
So what's the number? How many threads should people have open? How many?
Well, again, let's go back to the Serengeti a couple 100,000 years ago, plains of East Africa. Okay, there's probably a few dozen people in your tribe, and very rarely you meet other tribes. Okay, so let's say there's a few dozen women, a few dozen men at most, and a lot of them are paired up. A lot of them are not age appropriate. Clearly, a lot of them are unattractive or unhealthy or not suitable for other reasons. So you probably had a choice of 3 to 5 people. I'm just throwing that, I'm pulling that out of my butt, but you get the idea. That's how limited our choice was. And you had to figure out which was the best of those choices. It wasn't infinitely many people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
and sorry, just to add to that quickly, in countries like India, where you have matchmaking and that's done by family, for example, we see that actually those relationships last the longest.
Yep.
And on a final note, I know we need to get to our next interview, is that this whole notion that dating is just something optional, or it's like this little cherry on top of the sundae, that's really misguided, because ultimately it comes down to the most basic need of life, which is to continue and reproduce. So this is like really high stakes, really deep stuff. And we can't treat it as something optional. Men and women need each other, but we have very complementary but asymmetric places in that dynamic.
Yeah, socially for our civilization, but also mentally, physically, like our health, our mental well-being. It's really the quality of our relationships.
Here. Well, thank you so much for interviewing today, and also for writing the book that you've written, Primal Dating.
Yeah, it's not out yet, but if anybody's interested, you can go to primaldating.com and get on the list to have it announced. Or actually just please stay in touch. Just drop us an email at primaldating@timash.com.
Great.
That's the best thing to do.
Perfect. And is there anything in particular that you'd like to be able to do with the dating industry? Is there anything?
Yeah, I think, what you mentioned, I think would be a lot of fun, which is we'd be happy to do webinars where we can have your users and clients volunteer their profile for live teardowns, because we have men's and women's guides in the book for how to fix your dating profiles. So I think that'd be a lot of fun. People would learn a lot. It'd be a value add. We're happy to do those. So again, just reach out to us.
Fascinating. I'd love to see that as well. It would be both educational and entertaining, I think. That way I remember you doing them at the conference, the conversion conference. So
absolutely. It's always fun.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.